Chandler Morris, quarterback one for TCU football, spoke with Andy Staples of On3.com recently and had some comments about the upcoming season and a really interesting comment about the tempo of this offense. Even his dad, Chad, was fascinated by the speed that they were working with. Also, Travis Hunter, Colorado corner slash wide receiver. Maybe how much did he play on the offensive side of the football at Jackson State, and where can we expect to see him when the Buffaloes come into Fort Worth on Saturday? All that and more coming up next on Locked On Horned Frogs.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, your team every day. It's Locked On Horned Frogs. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. And first of all, thank you to those who have set the goal to get to 800 subscribers by the time TCU kicked off against Colorado. And that happened. Okay, that happened yesterday. So we're over 800 subscribers now. Excuse me. I think we're at 810 when I'm recording this. So why don't we just go for 850 before the season starts? Let's see if we can do it. We got 5 more days here. Let's see if we can get there as TCU prepares for their season opener against Colorado. Frogs have Chandler Morris as their starting quarterback this year, which is the same as last year, but we all know the story from last season. He goes down with an injury. Max Duggan takes over. The rest is history. And so Chandler has been, sitting behind someone for a long time, whether it was at Oklahoma or at TCU behind Max Duggan for the past few seasons. It's his time to shine. And he spoke with Andy Staples. Andy originally was with The Athletic and then moved on to On3. And he's doing a podcast and some other content for On3. And he had like a good lengthy one-on-one interview with Chandler Morris on his latest podcast. Some things that stood out from what he talked about. Obviously, a lot of discussion about, being a backup last season. He said it was hard at times. There were times where he really had to push himself to continue to watch film and prepare the same way because it's easy to get really discouraged when you're not playing in the games and to fall into this mentality of, why do I need to keep putting the work in, right? Why do I need to keep, busting it for these late nights to try to prepare if I'm not getting in the games on a regular basis? But he did that. He talked about Jalen Hurts and trying to learn from the way he handled his situation when Tua Tagovailoa replaced him in the national title game because he wasn't playing well. And then that next season, he was a backup all year long, got his opportunity in the SEC championship game, took advantage of it, led Bama to a comeback victory in that game, and then ended up going to Oklahoma and having an outstanding season under Lincoln Riley there. And just the fact that he tried to have a good attitude, it sort of got lost in last year's season. And we talked a lot about the way Max handled his situation, right? Like he was named the backup quarterback. He decided, no, I'm not going to transfer. I'm going to stick it out. I'm going to try to get the job done here and be a great teammate and get my degree from TCU. And that was a great story. And I don't want to discredit Max at all, but it was also really cool the way that Chandler handled last season. I mean, from what we could tell, no discontent, at least not publicly. I'm sure he was upset and frustrated at times. Those are all normal emotions when you go through a situation like he did, but he handled it the best way he could. He tried to be the best teammate he could for Max Duggan and, just took it like a champ and continued to do his job and do it well. And now he's going to get a chance to start against Colorado. So we talked a lot about what he learned from last season and how to deal with adversity. He also discussed the mentality of last year's team, how they were, they had a lot of seniors that were angry and that hadn't lived up to expectations to that point in their TCU careers and really wanted to close out their careers at TCU with a bang and by winning a lot of games. And they went and did that and they played with a chip on their shoulder. And you hope that's the case again for this year's team. We won't know until the games start, but I think that mentality was so helpful for them last year and just the confidence they got each and every week by winning game after game, coming back and winning games, winning close games. And that's something that from this core group of guys, you hope they're able to stick together and bottle up and take with them going into this next season. And then he talked more about personnel, Chandler did, and said JoJo Earl and John Paul Richardson were really impressive in practice. He loves what they're bringing to the table. He mentioned that pretty much all the transfers they've got that are coming in have picked up this offense quickly, and everybody's learning a new system with a new offense coordinator, but they're doing a good job learning their terminology, learning how they need to, where they need to be on plays, what they need to do, and how to do it well. And he also said this was his fourth offensive coordinator in 4 seasons of college football, which Jared Wiley has a different path, but I remember Jared Wiley saying that at Big 12 Media Days too. It's the fourth offensive coordinator in 4 seasons. And so he said that they feel good and comfortable with what they're doing and they understand the terminology well, which we won't really know for sure until the game start, I guess. But that's also just in part, that's modern college football. And it's another one of the sort of new things that's happening around the country is that you have so much coaching staff turnover from year to year, especially with coordinators, that I think these guys are pretty used to learning new systems. And there's, similar concepts in what they're doing, but multiple people now have said that in a lot of ways it's completely different how they're approaching things and how they're trying to get this done on a day-to-day basis with a new system under Kendall Briles. The thing that stood out to me the most about this conversation with Andy Staples, and I know I've talked about this, I've beat this drum now a lot, and I've sort of ingrained this in people's heads. But one thing about those Arkansas teams is they didn't really go that fast. Like they weren't always a tempo team. And we heard AJ Ricker talk about this. He said, the tempo is really the key to this thing. Sonny Dykes said in an interview recently, he felt like TCU was at their best. The TCU offense last season was at their best when they were going fast, when they were moving with purpose, when they were moving in a hurry, and forcing the defense to stay on their heels and not sub and stay in their base stuff. And Chandler Morris said that Chad Morris, his dad, who I know many of you know this, but he's a longtime college football coach, longtime high school football coach, was head coach at SMU, was a head coach at Arkansas, spent time as offensive coordinator for Dabo Swinney at Clemson, was an offensive coordinator at Auburn under Gus Malzahn. And so he's been around. He's run a lot of different variations of the spread offense, and he is a guy that likes to spread it out. He likes to go fast. He likes to throw the ball around. That is, what's ingrained in his mind and who he is as a coach. And so he said Chad Morris came out to practice recently and was just observing the team, seeing how people were doing, seeing how someone was doing right. And he watched them go through team sessions. And he asked Chandler, he was like, how the heck are you going this fast? Like, how is this offense moving at this pace? And Chandler was like, yeah, I mean, it's a priority. Like we're trying to do it. And Andy Staples followed up and was like, wait, like your dad, who has been around and has engineered some pretty high octane offenses in his day. And he brought up, a Peach Bowl that Clemson played against LSU, where Clemson ran like 105 plays, and the LSU defense was just totally gassed at the end of the night. If Chad Morris is surprised or intrigued by how quickly you're moving up and down the field and getting to the line of snapping the football, that tells you something, because this is a guy that's been around offenses like that for the majority of his career. And I think one thing it tells you is it gives you positive reinforcement and hope that they do really have a good understanding of this offense from a terminology standpoint, from bringing it from the whiteboard to the field, that everybody has a good sense of, okay, this is what I have to do. Because if you're blowing assignments, if you don't have a grasp of what the offense is asking you for and asking you to do on a play-by-play basis, then you can't go fast. You're not going to get lined up properly. You're going to blow assignments. It's not going to work. So I think it speaks to that. And it also just speaks to the fact that there's a huge emphasis on tempo. And I think with everything we've heard this offseason, you can bet that TCU is going to be moving quickly on drives when they take on Colorado at 11 a.m. And I'm excited to see it in person. I'm excited to see it, live and real with the bullets flying this week. But yeah, that caught my attention. That Chad Morris, who has been around fast offenses, hurry up offenses, tempo offenses his whole career, even he was like, man, they're getting after it. They're getting off the line. They're snapping the football and they're moving. And so I think we're going to see a lot more of that this season from TCU football. But good interview that Chandler Morris had with Andy Staples. And, you hope this team comes out focused and ready to rock. And there's always like some sloppy moments and things that you're going to have to work on, obviously, after a week 1 game. But if they can keep those to a minimum, that'll be huge. And, he talked about the challenge of preparing for Colorado as well. They're watching a lot of Alabama film. Colorado's DC comes from, Alabama, and they're trying their best to understand a lot of those concepts. But he said it's really more about like what they do, and they're trying to focus on themselves and executing well and finding a way to be, the best version of TCU football going into that game. And they think if they do that, then it's going to pay dividends. And they won't have to worry as much about what Colorado's doing from a schematic standpoint. When we come back, Travis Hunter is probably the biggest name on this Colorado football team. And he's a defensive back by trade, but played both ways in high school and also at Jackson State. But how much did he actually play on the offensive side of the football? And can we expect to see him lining up at wide receiver against TCU? We'll talk about that next on Locked On Horned Frogs. This episode of Locked On Horned Frogs is brought to you by Betterhelp, one of our great sponsors. If you've ever thought about like, man, I need to step into the world of, getting mental health resources, I need therapy, I need someone to talk to. It can be an overwhelming thing, but it doesn't have to be, right? Like I'm someone who's gone to therapy for anxiety, and it's been really helpful for me. People in my family, my children have been through similar situations, and it doesn't have to be there doesn't have to be a stigma around it, right? We live in a time now where we're more open and honest about this than ever before, and everyone deserves that access to the resources they need. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. So if you get with someone and you're like, this isn't really working for me, you can make a change, and there's no additional charge. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnCollege today to get 10% off your first month. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnCollege. Get the help you need today. BetterHelp, they are a sponsor of the Locked On Network, and Locked On Horned Frogs is brought to you by BetterHelp today. So I want to talk about Travis Hunter here in a minute, who is, one of the more intriguing players in this game. But I saw this last night. And so the Texans and the Saints are playing on Fox, preseason game, Sunday Night Football, Fox broadcast team trying to get some reps in before the season starts. CJ Stroud, Texans quarterback, there's some interest there. And they're promoting that Colorado TCU game, which Fox has been promoting a lot over the past few months. It's a huge matchup. Big noon kickoff's going to be there. I believe Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson will be on the call. So yeah, it's the game of the week for Fox that they are promoting heavily. And they said in this broadcast, they said breaking Colorado uniform details versus TCU. All white uniforms, new Nike cleats, gold like no one has ever seen before. And the players are going to be walking in wearing shades. So, all right. I mean, it's going to be a hot day. It's going to be a sunny day. So I guess I understand the need for sunglasses. It's going to be fun Saturday. I mean, this is a Colorado team that has a lot of confidence. Obviously, Deion's a guy that exudes a ton of confidence, and he should be confident. I mean, he's succeeded at just about everything he's ever done. He had a good tenure at Jackson State. He's now getting a chance at the Power 5 level. And it looks like Colorado's going to be coming in trying to put on a show. And you just hope as TCU fans, as TCU followers, you hope that TCU is ready for it and that they use it as motivation. And listen, everybody's trying to hype up their own brand, their own team. Everyone does, cool uniform reveal videos. But it was funny to just hear the way that was described. Gold like no one has ever seen before. All white uniforms, new Nike cleats, and the players apparently are going to be wearing shades coming into the stadium. So, all right, make an entrance and make yourself known. And then when the whistle blows and the game starts, we'll see what happens. One of those players, though, that I'm sure is very confident and has a reason to be for Colorado is Travis Hunter. And Travis Hunter, if you feel like you know that name, well, he was a top-rated player in the country in the 2022 class. And five-star recruit, 247, had him ranked at 99 out of 100. His composite ranking was a 100. He got a ton of accolades, a ton of praise. He was originally committed to play at Florida State, and makes a lot of sense. He's from Suwanee, Georgia, so not too far from home, right? And go play at a major program in the ACC that's churned out a lot of great athletes for years. But then I think it was on early signing day, actually, Deion Sanders in Jackson State, they were able to get him to flip, and he ends up playing corner, or committing and signing with Jackson State, and he's going to play corner there. And one thing about Hunter is he's an incredible athlete, and he had aspirations of playing both ways, and they allowed him to play both ways at Jackson State. Here's his scouting report, like when he from his time in high school and his recruiting. This is from Andrew Ivins, who's a big scout for 247 Sports. He says a generational type of talent, a legitimately cornerback one or wide receiver one for the class of 2022. Makes everything he does look extremely easy, smooth, explosive, competitive. At times, it seems like he's almost a human cheat code. As always, he's making highlight reel plays at the right time. Had video game numbers during his prep career, over 3,600 receiving yards, 46 touchdowns, and 19 interceptions. So, special player. Like, described him as a generational talent, which I don't follow recruiting as closely as some, but that's not a term that I feel like people, even in the world today where we tend to, hype people up and kind of oversell things, that's not a term that I hear thrown around a lot when we're talking about high school players. The assertion that this scout had was that he could have been the number one wide receiver in the country for the class of 2022 if he wanted to be. Like, if he told coaches and scouts he's going to play wide receiver and he set his mind to that, then he would have been top of the list there. So really special talent. And so I don't know, like, there's a lot of talk and question about how much is Colorado going to use him there? What are they going to do with him on the offensive side of the football? At Jackson State, he last season had one carry for minus 10 yards. So it wasn't like they were using him out of the backfield or in a lot of jet sweep situations. 18 receptions for 190 yards. So not eye-popping stats. Now, the one thing that does stand out, 4 touchdowns. So they got him the ball and found a way for him to get in the end zone. I know in one game last year he had a pick 6 and a receiving touchdown. He had a really nice season defensively. Had 2 interceptions, 8 pass breakups, and 19 total tackles, 15 solo tackles. So did a really good job at corner. Didn't just fill it up with INTs, but I imagine not a lot of people were targeting him or throwing it his way. When it was thrown his way, he made the most of his opportunities. But you look at those numbers on offense, and it's not like he was playing a ton of snaps. Like, those were limited opportunities that he was getting on the offensive side of the ball. So I think it'll be more situational. Now, it's possible that since he has a year of college football under his belt and maybe a better feel for, how to move forward as a player and handle himself, or just with with a new coaching staff and some new people around Deion, that they say, okay, we're going to play you more on the offensive side of the ball. But overall, it wasn't something that they asked him to do just all the time when he was at Jackson State. So I think it'll be pretty situational, especially on Saturday, but it's something to watch. He's potentially going to play both ways. The good news for TCU, I feel like their cornerback room and DB room is probably their strongest and deepest, spot on the field. I really like what they have with Josh Newton, Avery Helm, the Florida transfer I've talked about a lot. I think it's going to be great. And then you have guys like Shannon Kanda and Mason White who give you some added depth there. And so as great as Travis Hunter is, and I mean, I think there's a chance that he goes and makes some plays on offense on Saturday. I feel like TCU has players that can stay with him, even though he is, described as a generational talent, can't miss type of player. And I'm excited to see him play at this level, right? Like it was a really cool story that he went to Jackson State, that he went to an HBCU, that he went to play for Deion, went to go play for Deion. But it'll be awesome to see him playing Power 5 football this season and on more of a national stage moving forward. And I don't know if he'll be the guy getting the assignment against Savion Williams, if that'll be Kermani McLean, who is also a 5-star recruit. He's a true freshman, but 5-star corner coming out of high school, and another guy that Deion was able to go and get flipped from Miami to Colorado late in the recruiting process. But that DB room for Colorado is pretty impressive too. And Hunter's the guy I'm highlighting now because he's expected to play in multiple spots. But all around, they can play. And that's like a lot of Colorado fans have commented and said, like, you don't understand how talented this roster is. I think that's a little overblown. But, I mean, in that specific area, yeah, they pulled some pretty amazing players. And so we'll get to see that play out on Saturday. But I think the Travis Hunter situation, it's entirely possible that he could end up playing a lot of snaps on offense. It feels like something that they're going to pick and choose their spots with, though, throughout the game and throughout the season. When we come back, an update on realignment, and then we'll get to some audience reaction before we go. This is Locked On Horned Frogs. One of our longtime sponsors, FanDuel. Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet at least $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. That's a fantastic deal. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. It has an easy-to-use app that you can bet on everything from spreads to player props and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you don't want to miss. FanDuel's an official partner of the National Football League. There's going to be a lot of games on Sundays soon, a lot of action that you can bet on. If you're going to do it, make sure it's a place that you trust, and FanDuel can make it happen. They're the world's largest sportsbook, online sportsbook, official betting partner of the NFL. You can bet on player props, money lines, all those things, and make that $5 bet and get $100 off YouTube TV. That's a pretty special deal from FanDuel. They're offering right now. Again, that website, FanDuel.com/lockedon. Visit there today. Well, before we go, an update on realignment. I think I said this in yesterday's video. I'm not sure. But SMU, there's been a lot of rumors about the Ponies and then Stanford and Cal all joining the ACC as new members. And the situation with SMU, in an unprecedented twist, they are apparently willing to forego 7 years of broadcast revenue and basically just pay their own way into Power 5 football just to be a part of a major conference. Stanford and Cal, of course, are part of the 4 leftover schools that have kind of been left behind by the Pac-12 and didn't get invited anywhere else. And they are also discussing coming in as a partial member. ESPN was reporting today that there is now momentum on the ACC moving forward with expansion. There were 4 schools that voted no in the original vote: Clemson, Florida State, NC State, North Carolina. They need one of those schools to change their vote. Now, Clemson and Florida State are desperately trying to get out of the ACC. They're trying to go to the Big Ten or the SEC and get their own slice of the pie from the large TV contracts that those conferences are getting. And so for them, this is just a move of self-preservation. SMU obviously just wants to get in, major Power 5 football. But going back to those schools that voted no, I'm skeptical that Clemson and Florida State will change their minds because they're looking for a way out, and I don't think they want the league to expand. But NC State and North Carolina, maybe they can convince one of those schools. It feels like there's momentum. They said there's a meeting tonight, and there could be a vote as early as tonight as well if they can, get one of those votes squared away and move forward with expansion. But I made a joke on Twitter. I was like, SMU's kind of like pulling the Lori Logden move, who was part of that admissions scandal where, she was basically paying her daughter's way into USC, and they would come up with phony documentation that said, oh, well, this player's on the tennis team, right? And that's why they got accepted. But they didn't really qualify for these schools. They were just getting in, based on a money grab. And it seems like that's what SMU's trying to do as they get into the Power 5. And Brian Capers, I think it was, asked me the other day, like, should you be worried about or should TCU be worried about their recruiting potential with SMU moving to major college football? And yeah, I mean, potentially, like, obviously they have a huge backing financially if they're willing to forego 7 years of TV revenue. I don't really know I don't know how much these kids care about the opponents they play. Like, I know everybody wants to play in the SEC because it's the best conference. They churn out NFL talent. I don't know how much regionality matters now. But that would be a sell for SMU. It's like, well, you're obviously not going to be just an easy drive away from a lot of these games. So that's your realignment update. SMU, Cal, and Stanford all could be a part of the ACC soon. Okay, a lot of reaction from Monday's video where I talked about Sean Lewis and the Colorado offense coordinator, what they like to do on offense. One Colorado fan, Ramsey, said, don't forget Kent State played better against Georgia than TCU did. And Sean Lewis was the head coach of Kent State before he came over from Colorado. I replied, and I was like, listen, I don't think that tells you a lot about the Colorado and TCU game. I feel like Georgia was much more amped up for a national title game than they were, a non-conference game early in the season against Kent State. He said, well, it wasn't really, my comment wasn't really about his original comment. He says, was not about the TCU Colorado game. I guess he just wanted to give props to Sean Lewis. And yeah, Sean Lewis is a good coach. I think he runs a good system. I feel like TCU will be prepared for it, and they won't be super surprised by anything that Colorado does. But I realize that Sean Lewis is a really good coach, and he's one aspect of this game that I think gives Colorado a puncher's chance. And then a lot of Colorado fans chimed in and just talked about the talent on this roster, speed that Colorado has, everything they're bringing to the table. I'm going to try to dig in more on this topic on Wednesday's show. They're definitely bringing in some talented players, but they brought in 50 transfers, and a lot of these guys are not very experienced at the Power 5 level. I mean, I'm sure they're talented, right? And like they have ability, but they haven't proven it on the field. Like there's some that have, and that have done really good things, but I'll have a better breakdown of that tomorrow. I acknowledge, like, this is a much different Colorado team than last season. They're much more talented. I think this Deion experiment is going to work eventually. I just don't feel like it's going to come together before their game against TCU this Saturday, but we'll have more on that tomorrow and through the week. This is the Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day.